morning, and thank you for joining me on this live webinar. I'm going to be talking on the 2026 website checklist and leave you with 15 essentials that you cannot ignore. Now, just before I get started, hopefully there's no technical issues this morning, but if anyone can't hear me or can't see my screen, please just drop a note in the chat and we'll do our very best to help you out. Now, just a quick introduction to myself in case you haven't been on any of our webinars in the past. My name is Will. I'm the Managing Director and Founder here at Webbox. We're a digital agency that help our clients with their websites and their performance marketing campaigns. And after 17 years of doing this, we've built up a lot of insights, analysed a lot of data, and it's really with that experience that we're bringing these 15 essentials to you today. So hopefully there'll be something in here for everyone. Now, before we begin, just a few things to note. So we are recording today's session, so we can share a copy of that with you afterwards. If you've been on any of our webinars before, you'll know that they're relatively fast-paced. So if you want to deep dive into any specific points afterwards, please let me know and we can always do that. And always, we'd love your feedback on this session or any ideas that you've got on webinars as we start to plan for 2026. So please get in touch, or if you're sharing on social, you can tag us at Webbox Digital. Now, the plan for today's session is to go through these 15 essentials, but I'm going to break them into 4 core areas. Now, the first area is going to be some kind of foundational elements, specifically around user experience. I'm then going to move into some things which are a little bit more exciting and how AI can enhance your websites. They'll focus on converting more conversions and then finally future-proofing your website. So that's how we're going to play today's session. So without further ado, I'm going to make a start. I'm going to make a start on the first section, which is all around the foundations of user experience. And this will cover the first 5 essentials. So first up, we've got an essential for your website in 2026 is having a mobile-first design approach. Now, I want to be really clear here. What I'm not talking about is just having a mobile-friendly website or having a responsive website. Hopefully by now, everyone's got that in place and we can all tick that box. What I'm actually talking about is having a completely different approach to making any change on your website. That everything is looked at and analysed and designed for a mobile first rather than a desktop. So when we create that new page, it's tested and it's designed for mobile. Or when we create a new feature, we consider its user experience on mobile first before we look at it on desktop. Or when we're completely rebuilding our website from the ground up, again, we think about the experience, the navigation, the design, the blocks, and the hierarchy of those for a mobile before considering it on a desktop. Now, why is this important? Well, we know that on average, more people will use a mobile device to look at your website than a desktop. Of course, that changes from business to business, but that's an average statistic. But we also know that Google is a mobile-first index, and therefore they're looking at your mobile experience and page speed and other factors before desktop. So it really is important that we take a completely mobile-first approach when making any change to our site. Now, number 2, another essential is having a clear proposition on your website. Now, a rhetorical question is, who can tell me what this business does? And I'm pretty sure you'd all say, I've got no idea. And that's because actually what you need to do on this site is navigate around several different pages before you actually understand what it is that they do. They haven't nailed and made it clear what their proposition is. But making this more personal, could you tell me what your organization or business does within 4, 5, 6 words? And that's actually really difficult because we can all talk about our businesses and what we do, but that often comes with, a kind of 1-minute ramble about we do this and we do that and we do it for this person and we've been around for this long. But actually summarizing that in 4, 5 or 6 words is really difficult. But actually putting a proposition at the front and center of your website, above the fold, so people see it before they have to scroll, will drive a better engagement rate on your website. So stats show that actually when the proposition is not clear and people land on your website and they're not sure what you do, it causes confusion, and they either get fed up and they leave, or they're clicking around trying to understand whether you are the business that they should be inquiring with and engaging with or not. So we want to remove that friction point by having a really clear proposition on your site. And actually, one of the best ways to do this is to try and get some external eyes on your site. Because when you look at it, or any of your marketing team internally, you'll look at it through kind of tinted glasses because, of course, you know what the business does. So it's really important that sometimes you get some external eyes to look at this and actually say, look, without knowing anything about us, do you understand what we do as a business just by looking at our homepage? Now, moving on to number 3, and this is all around having forms that actually convert. You know, forms are a bit of a bugbear of mine on websites. So often we look at a website and there'll be really long forms that need 10, 15, 20 fields filled in to complete them. Or maybe just the kind of layout is really cumbersome. They can be really, really long sometimes, or split over, lots of different steps. And it just feels like forms are often an afterthought when building a website. And we're really keen to actually make sure that we don't do that when we're building websites here at Webbox. It's really important that form UI and UX is considered at the heart of the design process, as opposed to just embedding some forms that might be generated from your CRM and not really caring too much about their user experience or whether they actually fit with the design of the site. So start to think about how we can make our forms reduce friction for the users so that we can get more people completing the forms. Now, I've got 2 suggestions for you. The first is you might want to look at a platform called Typeform. Now, Typeform, in my opinion, are kind of leading the way when it comes to form UI and UX. Their forms are just beautifully designed. They allow you to navigate through them using a keyboard or a mouse. They're completely accessible. You can do it on any device. It normally breaks down the forms just one question at a time, so it's really digestible. And they normally take the full screen, so you're not distracted then with other things around the page. So as I say, in my opinion, they're kind of leading the way. It'd be a great kind of resource for you to have a look at later on. Another example to boost engagement with your forms is to implement what we call a progressive lead form. Now, a progressive lead form actually adapts as the user returns to the site. So what happens is, let's say someone's signing up for a newsletter. They would come to your website on the first visit and they would leave you with their name and email address because that's really the core information we need for that particular subscription. Now, let's say a few days later they come back to your website. At that point, we're no longer asking for the same information because we've already got it and we've detected that we know that user. So we change the form, and at that point we could say, thanks for signing up to our newsletter. Could we take your job title and company name as an example? And over time, you can continue to find more or request more information from your users and drip feed this information into your CRM to build up information about a user over time. Now, the great advantage of this is that you're not overwhelming someone with a really big form when actually it's not necessary for that core conversion point. So yeah, start to think about how you could implement that for your kind of use case. And progressive lead forms are normally provided by most of the leading CRMs. So if you're using things like HubSpot, Salesforce, Dynamics, and so on, you can normally get this kind of functionality out of the box. Now, moving on to number 4, and this is actually having your website being fully accessible. Now, just using the hands up feature in Zoom, I wonder if I could just get a bit of participation, if that's okay. So if you could pop your hands up if you considered accessibility during your last website build. Okay, so we've got some hands going up, which is great. Let's have a look at the numbers. Okay, so we've got around about 1/3 of the people on today's webinar saying that they considered accessibility. Okay, thank you for getting involved in that. That's really helpful. Thank you. So around about a third of you considered accessibility in the website build, which is really good. I'm really pleased to kind of see that. But obviously we want everyone to be considering accessibility in their website builds. Now there's a little myth, isn't there, that, you know, having a website that's accessible is really only a requirement for those in the public sector. And there's a little bit of truth in that, but actually only a tiny bit of truth. Actually, all of our websites should be accessible, because actually making sure that our websites are accessible doesn't just improve the experience for those that might have a particular impairment, but actually it improves the experience for everyone. So it's really important that we do make our websites accessible. Now, these are things like making sure background and foreground colors have a good contrast ratio. This is making sure the font sizes are not too small, potentially even allowing the user to change font sizes and contrast, making sure that the buttons are not too small, especially on mobile, and so on. So these things are not necessarily rocket science. They're actually fundamentals of good design, but it really does need to be considered when either updating a website or completely rebuilding it from scratch. Now, you might have heard already that there's a accessibility standards which is called the WCAG, and at the moment they're on version 2.2. So you might have heard of the WCAG 2.2, and then things like AA or AAA compliance. Okay, but there's word on the street that WCAG version 3 is coming out, and it's going to be more outcome based. Now, we've actually written a blog post around this and how it could impact your website. So I really encourage you to take a read of that. I can share a link with you afterwards as well, or feel free to scan this QR code. But it would be good just to clue yourselves up on what is around the corner and how that might impact your website. Moving on to number 5, and this is all around page speed. Now, we all hate a slow website. You know, that is a real frustration point for all of us. Whether you're on mobile or desktop, if you're there waiting for a page to load, you know, after about 3 seconds, we might just give up and go elsewhere. So we know this is a big factor, but actually more than just our own frustration, it's a big priority for the likes of Google and other search engines, because we know Google certainly have come out and made it really clear that page speed is a ranking factor. They've even made a page speed testing tool that you can run your website through, and actually it gives you recommendations on how you can improve things. So we know that this is really important. And when I talk to people about this, they often feel it's just making sure there's maybe less images or less video on their website, and then it'll load quicker. And actually, that is really surface level stuff. We actually encourage our clients not to reduce imagery or video, but actually to optimize it. So make sure that all of your images and videos are compressed. Make sure that you're serving images in a web-friendly format, which would be a WebP format. Make sure then you're doing more technical things like compressing code and making sure that your server has a good response time. So there's lots of factors to this, which maybe some you can influence internally, and others you might need a developer to help you with. But I think the first starting point for you would be to head over to the Google PageSpeed tool, and there's a link to that on the screen now. Run your website through that and have a look at the score. And really what you're aiming for is 90% or higher in that in that tool, in that report. So if you're less than 90%, there's a lot of work to do. But actually, if you're 90% or higher, then Google deem that kind of acceptable. It's kind of in their green zone, so you can pat yourselves on the back. But please note, it is something which naturally degrades over time, because not only are you changing content on the website, but also, let's be honest, Google moved the goalposts. So it's really important that we circle back to this maybe every 3 to 6 months and make sure that we're still in that kind of 90% or higher bracket. Okay, now that's the first section. We're going to move on now to AI enhanced experiences. And again, I've got a few ideas that you can implement on your site here. Now, number 6 is around AI-powered personalization. Now, let me just show you this video of a tool from Personalize. Now, what this is doing is it's showing one user on the left a particular version of the page and another user on the right a different version of that page. Now, let me be really clear. This is the same web page. It's the same URL, but they're seeing different things. And they're seeing different things because they're actually known to the platform. We've got a picture as to what preferences they like, how they're using the website and so on, or could even be their location, and other factors. And then the content on the site is personalized accordingly. Now, if we're honest, we're all different, and that's a good thing. We've all got different preferences. We all browse websites in a different way. We're all at a different stage in the marketing funnel. We might just be kind of interested all the way through to ready to convert. And therefore, it's important that our websites are adjusting to what they know about us. Now, this probably happens on far more websites than you even realize without you happening. And therefore, it is something which is happening here and now. This is not like a future idea that you need to worry about in a few years. This is something which is happening on a lot of sites now and something which we'd really recommend that you adopt as soon as possible. Now, Personalize is one platform you could use. Another one is Recombi, and there's many others that you could take a look into to implement this functionality on your site. But I guess the takeaway here is to start to think about how the user experience and the content and the imagery and everything else could be more personalized to that specific user in order to drive higher click-through rates and higher engagement and more conversions. Now, number 7 is having an AI-powered search feature. Now, on our websites, they probably have a search feature or maybe a filter option. That's relatively common, right? But what is, I guess, the standard is that we tag content within our CMSs and we categorize content so that it can be found in the search. And this is good, but it's not great because actually it's going to give us results based on whether we've tagged things correctly and categorized them correctly and whether we've got the right keywords in the content and so on. So actually there's going to be lots of gaps where people are searching for things, but it's actually not surfacing the results that would be most suitable for them. So let's introduce AI-powered search. Now, the key differences here is that it understands context and intent, and it also understands more about the user. So let me give you a really basic example. Let's say you're browsing around the BBC News website and you're reading different news articles, but you're reading more about sport than technology, let's say, because that's really what you're interested in. You're interested in the latest sport news. Now, when it comes to making a search or looking at related content, like related articles, what the BBC News website will start to do is surface more relevant news articles to you based on what it knows that you've been reading, so that actually it's more likely to get your click and you're going to stay on the platform longer. Now, this is a really basic example, but if you translate that into your business and your kind of objectives, you can start to think about how you could tailor search results to be closer aligned with what the user is actually looking at on your site and what their intent is at that moment. And it is a game changer because people find information much quicker and often stay on the site longer because it's more relevant to them. Again, there's a number of different platforms that you could use to help you implement this. Recombi is a fantastic platform. It's what they call a recommendation engine, but there are plenty of other recommendation engines that you could take a look at, and this will help you plumb this functionality into your site already. Now, moving on to number 8, and this is having structured data and AI-friendly markup. Now, this really should be an obvious one, but more and more people will be finding out about you through LLMs as opposed to just a standard Google search. So it's really important that our websites are basically geared up and ready for that. Now, one of the ways that you can do that is making sure that all of your content that is relevant is wrapped in what we call structured data. So let's think of a real example. If you've got an FAQs section on your page, you would wrap the FAQs, the questions and the answers, in structured data tags to signal to not just Google, but also to LLMs that these are question and answers. You will then have the option available to you to start ranking in the AI overviews, in the people also ask area of Google search results pages and other places, okay? But you need to tag it first to kind of signal to Google that actually this is the kind of content it is. Or maybe you have events on your website. Again, you can tag it with the event title, event description, event date, and so on. There's lots of different structured data tags that you can use. So starting to understand more about them and what kind of content on your site that you could tag is a really good first step here. Now, doing this hopefully gives you the ability to start ranking in these places. It isn't like the sole answer. So just to be really transparent, this is not like once I've done this, I'm all of a sudden going to just start, kind of appearing in these AI overviews and I'm going to be kind of fed in through ChatGPT. But it's a really big thing that all websites need to have in order to have a chance of ranking here. Okay. Now let's move on to number 9, and this is analytics and tracking. Now again, just want to use the hands up feature on Zoom to get a sense of what you're using. So could you just pop your hands up if you're using Google Analytics to track visitors on your website? Okay, a really good number of you, so it's around 2/3, give or take. Okay, so the majority of you are using Google Analytics, that's great. And then just finally, could you keep your hands up if you're using event or e-commerce tracking within Google Analytics? Okay, less of you, so just under a quarter. Okay, so about a quarter of you are using event or e-commerce tracking. Okay. Right, that's helpful to know. Thank you for getting involved. You can put your hands down now. That's great. Feel like it's in school. Okay, great. So, do you know what? The point here is we often put Google Analytics in place and we feel like, we've got tracking covered. We're tracking traffic that accept our cookies policy and we pat ourselves on the back. And really what we're trying to encourage everyone to do is kind of take this up another level. So making sure that you've got event tracking in place is a good starting point. So event tracking is when you're tracking specific things that happen on your website. So as an example, it might be someone's clicked a button, completed a form, downloaded a document, anything of that ilk. If they've completed a conversion point on your site, it should be tracked in Google Analytics as an event. Another way that you can take this up another level is to use something like Hotjar, so that on Hotjar you start to track how people engage with content, how they're navigating around the navigation, how they're scrolling down a page, so on and so forth. It gives you a huge amount of data. And the important thing here is not just having these things in place and collecting the data, but actually the important thing is analyzing the data and making informed decisions off the back of it. Okay, so having all this data at your fingertips is kind of like your baby step number 1. Actually, the hard work is starting to analyze that data and making sense of it, and then saying, right, well, now we know how people are using the site, or now we've seen these friction points, we're going to make some changes, and they're far more data-driven than preference-driven, which is the right way to go about it. Now, this might seem daunting, but it really isn't. You can either do this in-house or work with an agency that can help you analyze this data and provide you with a suite of recommendations. And as you can probably imagine, that's one of the things that we help our clients with here at Webbox, as we're actually a Hotjar partner, and we work closely with the platform to get the best results for our clients and uncover the things that are really holding the site back. Now, if you're maybe wanting to better understand Google Analytics and what you can do with that platform, we've actually got a document or a guide which can help you with that. So you can scan the QR code here, or I'll send you a link to it later so that you can get more out of the platform in your day-to-day role. Now, moving forward, so we're going to move into a different section now, and this is all around generating conversions or helping you generate more conversions, should I say. So the 10th essential for your website in 2026 is having a continuous CRO mindset. And if you haven't come across CRO before, this is conversion rate optimization. Now, so often we come across marketing teams who might look at CRO as a one-off project and that's it. Or actually, maybe they've never done it. They've got some kind of feedback from maybe internal stakeholders or a few maybe partners, and they've implemented some changes off the back of maybe some of that feedback, and that's kind of as far as they've got. But you know what, with so much data at our fingertips, it really is a good opportunity to learn from that data and to make informed decisions about the changes that you're going to make on the site. So as an example, if we're tracking how people are using our navigation and we're watching back videos of them using the site and we can see that there's clearly a stumbling block in the navigation, maybe you've got 3 layers of navigation and it's just causing a lot of confusion and people aren't sure where to go, then off the back of that data, you can then make informed decisions about how to evolve your navigation and reduce it from 3 layers to 2 or 1 in order to make it a much easier journey around your site. This is a really basic example of really what I'm talking about today, is starting to analyze this data to maybe split test and to try 2 different layouts and see which one works, or 2 different navigations and see if that boosts engagement and so on, to then make more informed decisions about how people, to make more informed decisions about how you can then adapt your website. So this is something which we're really encouraging marketing teams to drive hard and fast, because we should be analyzing the conversion rate on a regular basis and then making changes to our website off the back of that data. So don't feel this is a one-off project. This is certainly something which you should be circling back to, let's say every 6 months, and that's probably suitable for most organizations. Now, if you're not sure where to start, I would say your starting point would be to make sure that you've got Google Analytics and also Hotjar installed on your site, okay? Now, both have got, obviously Google Analytics is free, but Hotjar has got a free plan as well. So it's really simple to get up and running with Hotjar, to install it into your site, and to start gathering data on how people are using the website. And believe it or not, one of the most interesting things about Hotjar is it records the user's screen. So you can watch videos back of people actually using your website and where they're moving their mouse, which is often where their attention is and where their eyes are, and how they're engaging with you and where the blockers might be. And that will open your eyes to how people are actually using your site in the real world. Now, moving on to our 11th point, and this is having primary and secondary call to actions. And I'm going to give a little thought as well on gated content. Now, all of our websites will have what we call a primary call to action. So this is where you're asking people to inquire or contact you. It might be to make a sale if you're an e-commerce business and so on, okay? And we're pretty good, I think, as a kind of, as a team of marketers at making sure that we've nailed that on our website. But I think what we often identify when we're reviewing and auditing websites is the lack of secondary call to actions. So a secondary call to action is where you're trying to get people to engage with you, but higher up the funnel. So this could be that they've downloaded a document, they've registered for an event, they've maybe downloaded your white paper, they've signed up to your newsletter, and so on. These are touch points that people can make with your organization that don't require a huge amount of commitment, and they don't require you to basically kind of have a sales call, off the back of it, which a lot of people are kind of nervous about. But it's just a nice way for them to engage with the brand. Now, what you need to do is start by listing out all of your primary and secondary call to actions. Maybe then put them in a priority order and then start to think about where these should be placed around the website. And this is a really good way then to start thinking about your full marketing funnel as opposed to just the bottom of the funnel, which is your lead generation. Okay. Now, on gated content, just a little thought on this. So we often get asked about, should I gate content or should I not, and so on. And after analysing a fair amount of data over the last couple of years on this specifically, we've come to the conclusion that actually you shouldn't gate content, and that's going to be our recommendation today, and it is to our clients the same, is that actually we should give our content and our documents and our guides and white papers away for free. But there's a few big caveats here, so I want to make this really clear. The caveats are that the document that they download should be heavily branded and have some call to actions within it. So no one could be mistaken that it's maybe from another company, that they know that this document has come from your company. It's really well branded, and within the document, it might encourage people to find out more or to inquire or to book a call with someone. So there's some call to actions within the PDF itself. And my other caveat is the only kind of scenario where I would encourage you to gate the content is if you've maybe spent a serious sum of money, tens of thousands of pounds on investing in research to pull together a white paper or a report which has significant value to a particular industry. Now, if that applies to you and you've done a lot of research, you've pulled all of this together, and actually what you're sharing with your prospects is of high value, then I can completely understand why you'd want to gate that, and that's fine, right? You go ahead and do that, and hopefully that works for you. But I would say that's in the minority of cases. In the majority of cases, let's give these documents and guides away for free. Let's really encourage people to engage with us at that level. Because what you will find is as soon as you put that gate in place and you want their details, your conversion rate drops significantly. And what we've actually seen in the data is often it drops by like 90%. So it's actually a significant drop. So though it might be difficult for some to hear this, maybe you're kind of not wanting to do it, I would just ask you to maybe even test it. Give it a few months where you remove that kind of gate, that form, and see then how many people actually download the document versus how many downloaded the document with the gate in place. Okay, moving on to number 12. This is around having trust and social proof on your site. Now, hopefully we all know that actually trust is the currency of the web. You're not going to generate conversions and drive engagement if people don't trust you, okay? Now, if they don't trust the organization, it's going to be really difficult for you to do your job as a marketer and actually drive performance through your website. So it's important that we understand that and then make changes accordingly. So some of the kind of practical things that you could be doing would be to potentially move away from the kind of standard things like just having a written testimonial and actually move to having video testimonials. Video testimonials have a lot more credibility to them. Obviously, they can't easily be made up versus a textual testimonial, but they just get people to buy into the story and to the authenticity of what that client is saying about you. So video testimonials is one way to do it. If you're maybe in particular sectors that are potentially quite restricted, and then you have to have lots of accreditations, then another way to do this is to basically shout loud and clear about those accreditations and to say, look, we are accredited with this body and that body, and we've got these certifications and so on. Those things again can build trust with your prospects. The other thing I really like is making sure that you highlight your talent within your company. People buy from people, right? So making sure that you have maybe a meet the team page and you talk a little bit about each person's expertise and their experience, and sharing a little bit about the culture of the business. Now, a lot of us are quite good at doing this, but we always come across sites that, really shy away from it for one reason or another. So I'm a big believer in, highlight your people and their expertise, because actually that does build trust and will help you drive more conversions. And interestingly, when you look at platforms like Google Analytics, it might end up being one of the most visited pages. Now I'm going to move on to the last section, and this is all around future-proofing your website. So let's move into number 13, which is around CMS flexibility. Everything I've mentioned today is all well and good, but it can't be implemented if you haven't got a CMS that is flexible and scalable. So if you're using a particularly kind of old or cumbersome CMS, or it's really heavily restricted and it always requires developers to get involved, then implementing a lot of this stuff is just going to be made more difficult. So the point here is, if you're looking to future-proof your website and to think longer term, is when you next rebuild your website, is to really think long and hard about the particular CMS that website is built on, so that you have longevity and you can scale the website more easily. Now, often this might be an open source CMS or a CMS that holds a large market share so that there's plenty of support around. But I'm not going to mention a specific name, because at Webbox, we don't just work with one CMS, we actually work with a handful. And we like to take an agnostic approach to CMS. So we try and recommend a CMS based on your requirements, as opposed to recommending a CMS that just works well for us. So I'm not going to mention a particular CMS name now, but I think you get the picture. It's a really important factor of your website. It is essential that your CMS is the solid foundation that you need it to be to have a website that lasts a good amount of time and scales with you as an organization. Now, if you want some help with choosing a CMS, again, we've got a guide on that where we actually compare some of the leading CMSs side by side and give you quite a pragmatic pros and cons list for each one. So if you're at that stage and you're thinking about potentially rebuilding the website on a different CMS, I'd really encourage you to download that document and then understand how that can apply to your business. Now, number 14 is having a scalable and secure infrastructure. And what I'm really talking about here is your hosting and your backup and your kind of more behind the scenes infrastructure. Now, at this point, don't feel like I'm going to go really technical. I'm not. I'll stick kind of surface level, but I appreciate this is a more technical topic. But this is often a topic which we don't maybe give much thought to. Or maybe we don't give any thought to it until the worst case scenario happens. So let's say you send out a large email to your database on a Friday night, and lots of people visit your site and it brings the website down because it's got too much traffic. You've hit a bottleneck with your hosting provision. That is the kind of thing where it doesn't really matter too much until the site's down. And at that point, then it's like urgent, it's critical, our website's down. Or let's say your website gets compromised, it's hacked, something awful happens to it, maybe data is stolen or something of that ilk. At that point, you might think to yourself, okay, are we taking regular backups of our site? Are we able to restore our website quickly? How do we even go about restoring the site? Who do I need to contact? So on and so forth. All of these scenarios immediately become critical when they happen, but actually before that, they're kind of almost not on our agenda. And what I wanted to do is today is to get us thinking about the hosting infrastructure that we have in place and our backup procedure and our restoration procedure, so that actually we've got a plan in place so that should a worst case scenario happen, that we've actually got some processes that we can work through to get the site back up and running. So that's all I'm going to mention on this one. I'm not going to get technical with hosting jargon, but just encourage you to have a plan in place. And number 15, this is the last essential for your website in 2026, is actually thinking beyond your website. You know, as marketing teams, we can often fixate on our website and how we can drive better performance through it and how we can make it better and faster and look even more like our brand and so on and so forth. And maybe we don't take the opportunity to step back and understand the wider ecosystem. So within our businesses and organizations, I'm sure we've got accounts platforms and HR platforms and CRMs, all of these different things which are kind of part of our IT makeup. And it's really important that we understand what is in play within the business, and then to consider whether some of these systems should be starting to talk to each other. So a really basic example, if a lead comes in through the website, does that automatically go into your CRM? Or do we automatically notify the sales team that they've got a prospect to follow up with? All of these things are kind of really important to improving workflow, to making sure that we're responsive to follow up with leads quickly, and to also make sure that there's a central source of truth for information, so that we're not inputting information in our CMS and our CRM, as an example, that we make sure it's all just in one place. So I would encourage you just to step back and to consider what is in place within your organization and whether there should be more integrations, more automations to just make things much more seamless for you moving into 2026. Now, I said I was going to share 15 essentials, but I'm going to give you a bonus tip. And that bonus tip is to check out a new platform which is called Wake. Now, we've got no association to Wake, but it's a platform that's been developed by a good friend of mine. And Wake stands for What AI Knows About You. Now, it's really interesting because it scans your website and it builds a picture as to what ChatGPT and other LLMs know about your organization. And do you know what is amazing is so often they'll know things about the organization which you know are true, but it might highlight areas where actually you don't want to be known for that, or areas where there's gaps. You want to be known for something, but actually the LLM doesn't detect that you provide that, or you should be known for it. So as a little example, we ran our own site through this a little while ago, and it said there was a content gap on our site around accessibility. And that was a real, kind of kick up our backside, because we talk about accessibility a lot on our webinars, and we make sure that the websites we manage and develop are accessible. But we didn't really write about it within our content. So that was really helpful to identify that as a content gap for us then to adjust our marketing plan. So look, this is a really good platform. I really encourage you to check it out, and it's really insightful. Now, just as we come to a close, I just want to mention a few things as we wrap up. The first is, it might be today that you're thinking, I could be getting better performance out of our website or PPC campaign. And if that's you, I'd love to offer a free website or PPC audit. This is not done through an automated tool. This is done by one of our teams spending hours going through your website or PPC campaign to uncover the good, bad, and ugly. And then once we've done that, we share that with you on a playback call. So the process is we start with a little intro call to better understand about the organization and your challenges and your objectives and so on. We then take that away for about 2 weeks and we work on the audit, and then finally we'll have a playback call with you. Now, if that's of interest, you can apply for a free audit by using that QR code, and I'll also send a link to it later on. We've done hundreds of these audits and they always uncover some really good insights. So if that's of interest, please feel free to apply. Secondly, we've got a ton of resources here at Webbox, lots of documents and guides to help you in your day-to-day. I've listed just some of them here on the screen, but again, I'll send you a link so you can download any of those later on. Finally, we run a lot of these webinars. We tend to do 1 or 2 a month. Now, as we draw towards the end of the year, we've got one more in the plan, which is PPC or SEO, how to choose and combine the right channels. So if you are interested by that topic, please head over to our Eventbrite page and you can register there. But also please follow us on Eventbrite, because if you're following us, you can actually get notified about new topics when we do release them over the next month or 2. So for now, I just want to say a massive thank you for you taking your time out of your day. I hope you found this useful, educational and insightful. And if you've got any questions, I'd love to follow up with you after this webinar. But for now, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.